Chapter 7, Reaping and Sowing. The mind, with its thoughts, is driven by feelings. Each feeling is the cumulative derivative of many thousands of thoughts. Because most people throughout their lives repress, suppress, and try to escape from their feelings, the suppressed energy accumulates and seeks expression through psychosomatic distress, bodily disorders, emotional illnesses, and disordered behavior in interpersonal relationships. The accumulated feelings block spiritual growth and awareness, as well as success in many areas of life. Dr. David Hawkins from Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, New International Version. Reaping and sowing is a concept that is supported in all of the world's major religions in one form or another because it is a universal truth. Whatever you sow, you will reap. This applies to every facet of our lives. It applies to what we see and experience in our relationships, finances, families, careers, and our physical bodies with health and disease. Uncovering this truth and seeing how it applies to our lives is one of the most important things to understand to start healing. Let's look at an example of how sowing and reaping applied for a client of mine. I had a woman come in with chronic pain in her neck and shoulders. Chronic pain is one of the most common complaints that doctors see people for. This pain had been ongoing for about 5 years. When asked about what she had done to work on the problem, she mentioned very common things that many people do, such as stretching, taking Advil when it got too intense, and chiropractic visits, which helped the most but never fully alleviated the pain for good. For her, the ultimate question was, why do I have neck, shoulder, and head pain? After asking questions about the physical nature of why this pain could have started and not learning anything remarkable on her very first visit, I decided to ask her a couple of questions regarding what the neck normally represents emotionally. With a smile, I looked at her in a very purposeful way and asked 2 questions. Number 1, what was going on in your life emotionally 5 years ago when you started getting the pain? Every health problem has a context. That context can be at the moment that a problem starts, or it can be from something accumulated from much further in the past. For example, some experts say that different forms of cancer take 12 years or more to develop in the body. She answered this question by telling me she had a terribly emotional breakup with a boyfriend. This seemed like a very likely context as to the cause of her neck and head pain. My next question was almost answered by itself given the response she had to the first question. The second question was, who or what is literally a pain in your neck? The lights came on for her, and in one sense she was starting to see what the problem was. The answer was obvious that her ex-boyfriend was the problem. Her ex was still in her life for various reasons, and she still felt many negative things towards him that hadn't changed in 5 years. In Ina Segal's book, The Secret Language of the Body, she summarizes possible contributing factors to neck issues as relationships problems, inability to communicate feelings, difficulty making commitments, feeling stuck, inflexible, pressured, like something or someone is strangling you, propensity to sweep issues under the carpet so you don't have to deal with them, holding on to unresolved issues in relationships, especially with parents, children, or past partners, often seeing yourself in a negative self-image, spending too much time thinking and trying to work things out, and not enough time being aware of your feelings by tuning into your intuition. The neck emotionally represents the idea of flexibility, the ability to see what's behind us, and being able to see more than one side of something. With regards to her ex, by her admission, she was very inflexible and stubborn with him. She was still carrying around much negative emotional energy towards him all these years later. Realizing that the problem was the anger, resentment, guilt, nagging criticism, and suffocating feelings she had towards him was a very important step towards full awareness and taking responsibility for her neck pain. Even though she now was beginning to see the emotional energy that was standing behind the problem, by no means did that mean the problem instantly disappeared. After discovering the energy of what was causing the problem, she asked the very inquisitive question that many people ask. Since he is the problem, what are you going to do about it? I told her that first, he is not the problem, the negative emotions are. Secondly, I was going to teach her how to release them so that she could be pain-free. She had sown many negative emotions over the years, which resulted in a reaping of chronic neck pain. After learning how to release these emotions, her neck pain completely disappeared. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Epictetus. Health principles of sowing and reaping. Let's run with this metaphor of sowing and reaping, break it down, and see how the truths of it are applicable as we experience health or disease in the body, and see what we can learn from it. To sow means to plant or scatter seed on the earth. To reap, to cut or gather a harvest, the fruit of sowing. Based on this metaphor, the following 9 concepts arise as a way to understand how sowing and reaping apply with health in the physical body. Number 1, reaping doesn't happen immediately. It takes time. Anyone who has planted seeds knows that when a seed is planted, one does not see the fruit of what was planted immediately. Some seeds take root and grow very fast, whereas others grow very slowly over time. Each seed has its own unique individual expression and growth. One seed, such as corn, sprouts up very quickly, has relatively superficial roots, and one can see fruit within months. Another seed, such as an acorn, takes a long time to root itself and grow. Its roots become wide and deep, and the full expression of an oak tree will take decades. Likewise, every problem we see in our lives, especially health issues, can crop up slowly or quickly. Some health issues are massive and complicated, and some are relatively simple and easy to deal with. If we sow negative emotions in our lives, eventually they can manifest symptomatically in the body. Our body will reap physically what we have sown emotionally. In the clinic, I always use the example of a glass of water to explain this. Let's say I hand you a glass of water and ask you to hold it out in front of you and ask you how much it weighs. Most likely you will say it doesn't weigh very much. However, weight becomes relative due to how long you hold the glass. After 10 minutes of holding it, perceptionally it becomes much heavier. How heavy will it feel after holding on to it for 1 hour? Eventually, you will begin to feel soreness and even pain from holding on to the glass for a long period. Negative emotions are like a glass of water. When we choose to hold on to them at first, they don't seem so heavy. But after subconsciously holding on to them for 10, 20, or even 50 years, eventually the body will give you a symptom or set of symptoms called disease in order to point you in the direction of what you're holding on to that needs to be surrendered or let go of. Our bodies manifest physically the emotional energy that we have chosen to hold from our past. What is interesting about this illustration is one thing. What can you do with the glass at any time? You can choose to let it go or set it down. The same is true of our negative emotions. We carry around our baggage from all those experiences that happened long ago. We all need to learn to let that glass go. A cold, for example, may crop up very quickly, normally remains relatively superficial, and the body can usually deal with it in a matter of days or weeks. On the other hand, cancer normally takes years to develop and build within the body. When one does begin to see the expression of cancer in the body, it is no small feat to deal with this health issue. Cancer may be like an oak tree whose roots are deep and wide and require a massive undertaking to deal with. This can include a total change of lifestyle, dietary habits, elimination or reduction of stress, change in exercise, and other helpful modalities such as massage, chiropractic, and acupuncture to be able to deal with the issue if one chooses to go the natural route. On the conventional side of things, doctor's visits, drugs, chemotherapy, radiation, or other forms of treatment are long, taxing, and expensive. The simple reality is that one doesn't expect that when a seed of watermelon is planted, that a juicy, magnificent watermelon will be ready to eat the very next day. I have heard from so many people how they were healthy without any symptoms present in the body, and then one day it all began to fall apart. Most of the time, this is very confusing for people. They don't understand why something is happening to them now. They may say things like, I haven't changed anything in my life recently, or I thought I've always been pretty healthy, and now this. As just mentioned, one of the most ominous and destructive of all diseases in the world today is cancer. People just live their lives, and then seemingly out of nowhere, a stage 3 diagnosis is given and a prognosis of 6 months to a year is given to live. People are left with massive confusion, fear, anger, sadness, guilt, and many other reactions from hearing such news. For many, it completely catches them by surprise, but the reality is that with most cancers, the ground has been fertile and the roots have been spreading for years or even decades, and now the harvest has come. Let's take one physical example to convey this point. Pesticides or chemicals are used to keep pests at bay so that a crop can grow unobstructed in the growth of conventional or non-organic food. I grew up for decades consuming conventional food, as most of us have. Pesticides are carcinogens. Carcinogens cause cancer. This has been scientifically proven repeatedly. Our liver, lymphatic system, immune system, and other parts of us work tirelessly to deal with and try to rid the body of these substances every day. These systems may have been able to do their jobs well for 10, 20, or even 50 years, but for many these days, a moment arrives when these systems don't have the resources or capability to help us any longer. It is this tipping point where we will begin to see the expression of certain health problems. We live in a very toxic physical world today. That's the sowing. And people's bodies eventually will pay the bill. That's the reaping. Cancer rates have risen exponentially in the past 100 years. So you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and have snacks every day filled with small amounts of pesticides. And every day these toxins destroy, wear away, and harm your body. The body continues to take this abuse every day until it can no longer defend and protect you. The harvest comes, and the fruit of the harvest can be very destructive. Pesticides are just one example of a toxin or carcinogen in our world today. As we covered in Chapter 2, our world is filled with thousands of chemicals today that all do the same thing in one way or another. They destroy health. Even simple things like our shower water, drinking water, deodorant, shower soap, or shampoo are some potent examples of other things that are filled with toxins. It's hard to pronounce the name of many of the chemicals included in our self-care products. You cannot consume pesticides and chemicals and self-care products for 40 years and not expect to pay some bill in the future. 100 years ago, we didn't have the types of chemicals and crops were grown naturally with natural fertilizers. Please be aware that this is in no way meant to convey guilt or blame. Blaming yourself for unconsciously making these choices is not conducive to healing. Also, feeling guilty or punishing yourself for the choices you made in the past will not foster healing either. We can take responsibility for what we know and can do now in this moment. We can only make better choices when we become aware of something in the present moment. We can become more aware and learn how to cleanse and heal our body today. The seeds we've sown from decades of poor health choices may be finally bearing fruit now. Lastly, I hear all the time how most people think that they are healthy and eat healthy. If 7 out of every 10 people in the United States today are dying from cancer and heart disease, 70% or more of people are not eating healthy and living healthy. Most people in the U.S. today consume dairy products, GMO wheat, GMO corn, GMO soy, GMO refined sugars, fried foods, and alcohol regularly. These foods will all produce cancer in the body. They are toxic and is what most people in the U.S. consume today. The chemical companies responsible for making these frankenfoods really do know how destructive they are for us. Nothing was wrong with the food before they altered it and added chemicals to them. With the number of toxins that we're all exposed to, health is just a misguided judgment by most people in our world today. Your perception of me is a reflection of you. My reaction to you is an awareness of me. Author unknown. Number 2, what is sown will manifest as something completely different to the eye in the future. 2 different seeds that look very similar can grow and be very different from one another. 2 seeds that look alike, once planted, bear completely different types of fruit. 2 people, such as twins, can grow up in the same family, have the same or very similar experiences, eat the same kinds of food over the years, yet have very different health problems in the future. Why is this? It's because we all have a very unique consciousness. By consciousness, I am referring to the emotions, thoughts, and beliefs that one holds within. Two twins, although alike in many ways, have completely different emotions and perceptions they experience. These emotions and the subsequent thoughts that arise from these emotional roots can be seen in very different expressions of health or disease in the future. How do we see this play out in the body? Every part of the body has consciousness attached to it. For example, one day a woman came into the clinic with a very persistent, chronic, achy, and sometimes stabbing pain in the bottom of her foot. The expression of this is associated with plantar fasciitis or heel pain. Feet help us to move forward in life. The heel grounds us to the earth when standing or walking. Inflammation is normally associated with some expression of anger in the body. So I asked her two questions. Are you frustrated about not moving forward in a particular area of your life right now? And what is something negative that you started to experience emotionally when the pain started 3 months ago? She started to cry and told me how frustrated she was at work, not getting a recent promotion and questioning her choice to have taken this job in the first place. She didn't know what else to do and was questioning all of these aspects of her life at the moment. We created awareness around what she was holding on to emotionally, and then one by one, she started to release all the emotions surrounding this whole situation. At the end of her session, I asked her to notice the pain in her foot, and to her surprise, the pain was completely gone. 6 months later, she still was pain-free, had quit her job, and was in a much better situation where she felt like she was moving forward in life. Every disease or health problem has consciousness attached to it as well. Depending upon the emotional factors that we're holding on to inside ourselves, certain parts of the body may be affected more than others. For example, the following aspects of consciousness are commonly associated with the skin: protection, breathing in life, self-acceptance, self-image, guilt, sensuality, and being thick or thin-skinned. Skin issues can manifest when something negative is associated with one of these concepts. One common health condition which affects many teenagers is acne. According to Ina Segal, acne can express itself in the body due to the following consciousness factors: feeling uncomfortable in your own skin, insecure, unacceptable, rejected, not good enough, unworthy of love, holding on to self-hatred, trying to hurt and punish yourself from past mistakes, controlling, and demanding unrealistic perfection from yourself. I have had so many people in my office that have struggled with acne for so long and tried every medical treatment under the sun. When I read this to them and ask them if any of it applies to them, they begin to nod in agreement or tear up because of how specifically it describes how they feel about themselves. When everything else has been tried, the one last area of health that is explored is consciousness. It should be first, but often the last. Consciousness will express itself into the body to get us to pay attention to the negative emotions and thoughts we are holding on to that don't support life. It is the built-in mechanism we have to help us grow, change, and evolve. A seed that is sown looks completely different from the seed's fruit. The volcano of anger that we went through when our spouse cheated on us can manifest as high blood pressure years later. The fear of being hurt as a child, which manifests as wanting to control everything and everyone around us, can manifest years later as diabetes. When we seek to control everything, our body may give us something that historically has been uncontrollable. Before insulin and metformin, blood sugar was very hard to control. Our body is simply bearing the fruit of what we are holding on to. Our symptoms are constantly speaking, but are we paying attention? Do we know how to interpret the language of our symptoms? It is we ourselves who create stressful reactions as a consequence of what we are holding on to within us. The suppressed feelings determine our belief systems and our perception of ourselves and others. These in turn literally create events and incidences in the world, events that we then in turn around and blame for our reactions. This is a self-reinforcing system of illusions. This is what the wisest among you mean when they say we are living in an illusion. All that we experience are our own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs projected onto the world, actually causing what we see to happen. Dr. David Hawkins from letting go, the pathway of surrender. Number 3, things that are sown can or cannot be fertilized and watered throughout life. Many of us know that we hold on to certain emotions due to things that happened to us in the past. Many also have a deep desire to grow and do many things to grow and change the expression of our consciousness. We read self-help books, do activities to overcome fears, join support groups, attend church or religious activities, pray, exercise, do things that purposely make us feel uncomfortable and stretch us. Either consciously or unconsciously, something drives us all inside to be better and to feel differently. Some of us grow rapidly and some of us do not. Too much fertilizer or water in life, and we can get burned out, wilt, and kill ourselves slowly or quickly. Too little fertilizer, and we don't grow much at all. We stagnate, and life just always seems to be the same year after year. How many of us have the same negative patterns, habits, and ways of being that we had 20 years ago? Often we don't know how to change this stuff in the first place, and are fairly unaware of how others actually perceive us. It happens to all of us. Radical self-discovery can be hard and painful, but necessary and rewarding. Another phenomena that occurs unconsciously in most of us is a simple principle in physics. Like attracts like and can act as a fertilizer for what we consider to be good or bad. For example, if you hold on to a lot of anger, you see angry people, situations, and reflections of your anger frequently. Depending upon how much anger one is holding on to is the degree to which you will perceive it in the world and others. What is held in mind tends to manifest, as Dr. Hawkins says. We draw more into our world of that which we are holding on to. This is done very unconsciously for most people. It's not until we make the unconscious conscious that we can make a different choice about what to do about it. Another way to say this is to bring the light of consciousness into our internal darkness. Shining a light onto the darkness inside of us is the first step towards being able to grow and change. The next and more radical step is actively to let these things go. Over the years, life will constantly be reflecting our anger or any emotion back to us in different events and circumstances until we let it go. Letting anger go, little by little or in big ways, changes our internal environment so that our perception of the world, the outside world, changes, including our perception of ourselves. Many people are unconsciously feeding or adding fertilizer to what was planted within them years ago without even realizing it. Becoming aware of what's deep within our consciousness is like realizing what plant was sown, chopping it down, and removing the roots, which creates space for the expression of another seed, something more joyful, peaceful, and loving, to express itself in and through us. We are dangerous when we are not conscious of our responsibility for how we behave, think, and feel. Marshall Rosenberg. Number 4, a harvest can be seasonal or lifelong. We reap or bear the fruit of what is in our consciousness throughout our entire life. At this point, it is important to talk about what growth actually is. One can have tons of book knowledge and be learning things all the time, but yet have zero change in consciousness or real growth. You can be the smartest person in the world, but have very little emotional intelligence. This is not true growth. It is essentially growing in knowledge, but not wisdom. Wisdom is a combination of knowledge and good emotional common sense. You can be the same angry, bitter person you were 20 years ago, yet in those 20 years have accumulated PhDs in quantum physics or rocket science. While learning book knowledge can be important, it pales in comparison to exploring and changing our inner landscape. One quick way to do that is to learn from our relationships, particularly marriage. Many people never think that their ex-wife or ex-husband, who is the worst person on the planet, could perhaps be the very best person to reflect to them things that no one else could. We don't see them as blessings, but secretly they are if we can reorient and recontextualize our responses to them. They are divinely put in our lives for our emotional growth. Many fail to learn from these opportunities because we're too busy blaming them and being a victim. We may blame, saying it was their fault, and fail to see the energy that we chose to hold on to that contributed to the problems we had. Our parents, spouses, children, coworkers, relatives, and everyone else in our lives are constantly offering us a reflection of us. Those closest to us generally offer us the hardest but best reflections because they know how to best push our buttons. When you feel negative emotional energy arise within you as you encounter someone, one of the best questions to ask is, what do I feel as I experience them? What do I need to let go of? If we continually sow anger, we reap angry people, events, and even health problems that are associated with anger. If we sow kindness, then we will frequently be kind to others, and others in turn are generally kind to us. This does not mean that we will never go through things that seem perceptively negative, but if what is sown within us is mostly kind, even in stressful, aggravating, or even negative circumstances, the expression of consciousness in those moments will mostly be kindness. We bear fruit, or a harvest, of that which is the expression of what is planted, growing, and expressing itself through us. This can be mostly negative, positive, or an interesting mixture of both to some degree. We will continue to bear fruit our entire lifetime. What types of fruit are you committed to bearing within you? To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. Lewis Smedes. Number 5, crops constantly need tending. Mindfulness allows us to see the kind of crops that we are growing within us. Without tending, mindfulness, weeds, unwanted emotions, abound. My father grew up farming in Nebraska, and recently he decided to work in a greenhouse in Michigan for the summer. He planted 5 greenhouses full of tomatoes. Planting the tomatoes was relatively easy, but tending to the crops is a constant task. Every day he constantly had to string and restring the vines up. He also had to pull weeds on a daily basis. If he does neither of these things, the vines will go everywhere and the weeds will abound. It will be a chaotic disorder in very little time. Growing tomatoes would be that much harder in a chaotic environment. But by daily tending to these crops, they can grow healthy, unobstructed, and express their full potential. Our minds are constantly experiencing the fruit of our past programming and the overall emotional context of our lives. Our continual habitual emotions, thoughts, and behaviors are the fruit of our consciousness and its expression into the totality of our life. We can choose to go through life mindfully, or we can do so mindlessly. What is a sad reality is that even after teaching tapping or the Sedona method to patients in the clinic and seeing very good results from using these tools, very few will continue to carve out time of their day to tend to their mind. Less than 5 out of 100 will take the time out weekly for an hour to sit with the contents of their mind and release what comes up. It seems like only when the weeds have gotten so thick and an annoying problem persists for us that we finally and begrudgingly turn to deal with the contents of the mind. Why wait to do this inner work, though? I usually see people in the clinic when a health problem has escalated to such an extreme point that they know something needs to change. Many of us wait until we actually have a problem to change things and deal with the weeds of our lives. Cancer, heart disease, or diabetes are the fruits of years or decades of poor health choices. What drives our daily lifestyle choices at the deepest level are our inner emotions. Even when things have progressed this far, many are unwilling to really change their lifestyles or deal with the inner world, or are unwilling to realize that healing can occur outside of Western medicine. Disease has an emotional context. It has roots in the past experiences and habits of our lives. We can read or pray about how to do something, but doing the grueling, hard inner work required by fully facing ourselves as we are within can be that much more profound. This is no easy or small task. We must be mindful or aware of the past and exactly how we continue to experience it in the present moment to be able to do something more productive about it. All of this is done with a constant reminder that God sends the rain and is the catalyst for all growth inside of us. It is only by grace that we can surrender in the first place. We are mindful of this as well, knowing that it is foolish to believe that we are the ones who cause something to grow, change, or flourish within. but it is our responsibility to use the tools life has given us to tend to our mind in the best way so that we can set up the best conditions for growth to occur. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to see and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against love. Rumi. Number 6, to change what one is reaping, what is sown must change. We just touched upon this very subject in the above paragraphs. The root of the problem must be uncovered and removed completely. This is surrendering or letting go. Often I joke with my patients who normally are in full agreement with me that letting go seems to be very difficult. At times I have commented about what I would say if Jesus suddenly came back and was standing in front of me. I used to ask in my mind, Jesus, you told us to forgive or to let go, but you never told us how to do this. I'm not asking this question anymore, but when I mention this to the people I care for clinically, this question almost always resonates with them too. How do we really let go? How do we change as humans? How do we alter behaviors that we have had our entire lives? How do we overcome the negative things we know we experience inside of us? We must completely cut out the roots for radical change to occur. Chopping off leaves will lead to good, but only small changes in our lives. But leaves always grow back. Chopping off branches will lead to even more profound changes in our life, but branches grow back too. Chopping off a trunk of a tree can have a very deep and profound change in our lives. But a tree can even regrow from that. To fully, completely, and radically change, we must understand, dig up, and remove the entire root of what has been sown and planted. Certain emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in our lives have superficial roots and are relatively easy to release and surrender. An hour or two may be sufficient for surrendering something. That may be analogous to pulling up a stalk of corn whose roots are not very deep and can be pulled up fairly easily. At the same time, let's say we have an oak tree of a problem in our lives. God can certainly change our consciousness in a way that this whole tree could be unrooted instantly. However, this is not the case for most people. For most people, the process of letting go would be much like it is done in real life when removing an oak tree from the ground. It must be done branch by branch and limb by limb. The trunk and the roots can take time to fully dig out and be pulled from the earth. Some problems in our lives have deep roots and require constant awareness and surrender. Clinically, people see this in vivid ways when it can take an entire hour to let go of just one emotion that wasn't all that intense. A vivid realization hits them that dealing with the really deep and profound things of their lives may take intense dedication and constant daily work to fully surrender. We live in a culture where many are programmed to think that consciousness is like Burger King, my way, right away. But this is rarely the case. Normally, this is just an excuse for not wanting to do the hard work of really digging up the roots of these oak tree-sized issues in our lives. Some people have a very real sense that all the emotions buried deep inside of them feel like an ocean or mountain of things to deal with. The thought of using a mindful approach to life and fully surrendering at all times can seem very overwhelming considering one's vast life experiences and limited time to deal with them. Others have expressed how they are very afraid of truly digging up the past. They are worried that if they bring this stuff up from the basement of their consciousness, that the emotions and the pain would be just too much to handle. The irony is that the cancer, a full-blown autoimmune condition, or another difficult health problem can be the body's way of expressing itself into their awareness, even if that is not what we want. Eventually, you may not be given a choice. Disease has a remarkable ability to force us to pay attention. Your body may force you to pay attention if you want to or not. Cancer or whatever difficult health problem can be the oak tree that needs to be cut down and uprooted so that you can truly heal. You have waited 40 years to face this part of yourself, and your body has been keeping the score. Would you rather bring all these things up and let them go with the potential to be healed, or would you like to continue to suffer under the weight of a very serious health condition and manage it only with medication and surgery? The courage to face ourselves always arrives when we are truly ready. An illness is merely our consciousness calling attention to something that needs to be looked at within us. There is something about which we are feeling guilty, fearful, or another negative emotion. There is a belief system we are holding on to that has to be let go of and canceled. There is something that has to be forgiven and something within us that has to be loved. So we thank whatever it is for bringing it into our awareness. Dr. David Hawkins from Healing and Recovery. Number 7, to have a new kind of crop or harvest, a new kind of seed needs to be sown. When we let go of our negative emotions, the soil of our mind changes. These changes support an entirely new crop or expression of life in and through us. When we let go of the negative, it gives room to the growth of the positive in our life. When we sow death, negative emotions, we reap death. When we sow life, positive emotions, we reap life. When we let go of the negative, we allow our true nature to express itself more fully. The fruit of our true nature, the spirit, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. We don't have to do anything to get these things. They are already what we are. By letting go of the negative, we simply reveal our true nature. In the revealing of our true nature, we more fully express this nature into every aspect of our lives. It is expressed into the physical body, our relationships, everything. If you want to be loved, give genuine love. Genuine love is not about expecting something in return. So if you get angry or frustrated because you are giving and not getting in return, this is not genuine, unconditional love. If you want people to be kind to you, give genuine kindness to others. If you want to see peace in the world, be peace first. The more peace you feel inside will correspond with a lessening of the negative emotions that you experience within. The lessening of negative emotions that one feels on the inside corresponds with a radical commitment to surrendering each emotion to God as it is experienced. Even the positive emotions are eventually surrendered as well. When you transcend all emotions, only peace as stillness, beingness, and allness remains. This is why it is critical to deal with these emotions as they arise in our awareness during every moment of our lives. If we are not aware of how we are experiencing every moment, which is rare for most people, then how will we be able to surrender into peace? If we become aware and through grace can surrender, peace will become the automatic consequence of surrender. Those who see the most growth in their lives are the ones who commit to let go of every unpleasant situation, emotion, thought, and belief that arises in every moment of their lives. With this surrender, a new crop or experience of life automatically arises in our life. Everyone is searching for happiness. The irony is that true and lasting happiness, which is joy, is ever present within us, waiting only to be discovered and uncovered. The kingdom of heaven is truly within. The remarkable thing is that we really do love our neighbor as ourselves. We do unto others as we do unto ourselves. We hate others when we hate ourselves. We are tolerant of others when we tolerate ourselves. We forgive others when we forgive ourselves. Eric Hoffer. Number 8, transcend the sowing and reaping cycle completely. The end of the road in the journey of surrender is realizing that one can transcend sowing and reaping, cause and effect, in the world of duality altogether. It is a profound realization that the mind can altogether be transcended. It is when all thoughts, beliefs, judgments, perceptions, opinions, and emotions stop that the mind is transcended. This is what peace is. A crop is sown in the world of form. The world of form is the force of all human attachment and suffering. Reality, with a capital R, is outside of the world of form. It is formless. We see Adam and Eve being characterized in the biblical story in a world of non-duality, a world that existed outside of perceptions of time, right versus wrong, good versus bad, us versus them, which are all dualities, or even form, though they existed in the world of form. They were expressions of oneness. They had a shift in perception into duality, which was good and evil, which is where suffering arises from when they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. The world has been progressively moving from the world of suffering and attachment of form into the world of total peace and the formless, which is non-duality. We see the experience of non-duality in all of the beings with the most advanced states of consciousness the world has ever seen. The difference of perception or non-dual reality can be seen when Jesus asked the question about who his mother and brothers are. He was fully surrendered into not needing to ascribe egoic attachment to form as my mother or brothers, because everyone in reality is his mother and brother. In the world, people say things such as they would rather die only for their family, or they love their kids more than the destitute children living on the street. What is being done is that specialness or value, which is duality, are egoically given to your children or every other child in the world. This is attachment. Attachment is suffering. We would suffer, that is, experience much greater negative emotions if our children were to pass away. But we would feel mostly nothing when we found out John, or insert any other name, from the other side of the world passed away. From the divine non-dual perspective, there is no my child or brother. God would never ascribe more specialness to one person or another. This is what makes love unconditional. And if we surrender into this state ourselves, we will also see the world this way and will love everyone the same, even our enemies. Using the word my is only attachment to form, ego, and suffering. From the divine perspective, everyone is equally a brother or sister. No separation exists. No attachment to form, possession, like as in my brother, or specialness is present. It doesn't exist in the pristine state of non-duality. When we love someone more than another, this is attachment. We must realize that this too must be surrendered. Unconditional love ascribes no specialness to anything or anyone and loves all equally because God loves all equally and all are special regardless of their behavior. Some may argue this state of consciousness is not possible in this dimension or during this lifetime. It is possible, but so few experience it, which is why it is rarely experienced or even talked about. When the full force of divine love is present and expresses itself as your very essence, because it is your very essence, then you can unconditionally love even your enemies, who normally are our enemies. They are people we feel the most intense negative emotions towards. In the pristine state of non-duality, the rapist and murderer are loved equally as if they were your brother or sister, because in reality, with a capital R, they are. In this state, you would only feel love towards everything and everyone. Love spills out of you like a well bursting from the ground to everyone and everything. It is non-discriminate. It is non-dual. No separation truly exists in the fullness of non-duality. It is only the enslavement to the mind and ego that gives us the illusion of separation. A you and me separation disappears as one would not see the hand as something separate from the fullness of the body. The body is seen as one unit and expression of consciousness, just as every person is a part of the complete whole expression of divine consciousness. We may think our hand is separate, which is what most experience, but this is only an illusion. It is the mind that dualizes everything. It is programmed to separate this versus that, see division, us versus them, make judgments, better versus worse, and opinionate, mine versus yours, about everything and everyone. This is just how the mind works, which is why it can and must be transcended. Without this, the fullness of peace cannot be experienced. In a full state of peace, love, and joy, no separation is seen as actually possible. All opinions, judgments, perceptions, thoughts, belief systems, and emotions cease to be identified with. When this occurs, the mind goes completely silent, and the internal chatter stops, because silence, with a capital R, is the background or ground of all reality, with a capital R. When separation dissolves, it is this wild moment in which we realize that we just are. I am, you are. There is nothing to do, and all is perfect because we have melted into the perfection of life itself. Our life is hidden in or fully becomes a part of the totality. It is a complete shift of internal perception. This is the place where the mind is transcended. No crops, ground, soil, seed, or world of form even exists. It was all just a very persistent illusion generated by the mind or the ego. We realize we are the witness and no longer that which is being witnessed, which is the mind and body. Beingness, which is who and what we are, that we are surrendered into, is the fullness, completeness, and allness of all of life. We are that. Even right now, you may be confused and not understand what was just said, as if you can't wrap your mind around it. Could you just let go of needing to understand and just be that? Could you let go of needing to argue a different point of view or perception, or of needing to be right and thereby making this wrong? Seeing the world as right or wrong is duality and consequently enslavement. How can formlessness be understood with form? How can the mind with its thoughts and emotions try to understand something that is devoid of thought or emotion and is greater than and beyond the mind? Ultimately, it cannot. Knowing about something is very different from being it. It just has to be surrendered into. A dog doesn't try to understand its dogness, it is just a dog. What's left to know when one surrenders into all knowingness? The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. Lao Tzu. Number 9, transcending the cycle of sowing and reaping. People always wonder why bad things happen to good people. It is important to understand that good versus bad is just a construct and judgment coming from the mind. Money can be used for good or bad. Gunpowder can be used for fireworks or to blow things up. The mind is the only thing that ascribes meaning to things. One can learn how to surrender and let go of all judgments, positionalities, opinions, emotions, and thoughts, the products of the mind. The mind can be transcended. In fact, our natural state of being is already that reality beyond the mind. We are all simply in the process of uncovering or becoming more aware of it. Someone gets cancer, depression, and asks, "Why me, God? I have been a good person and do good things." Both the context of the question and the health problem must be explored with curiosity. What emotion is behind the asking of the question in the first place? Is it confusion, sadness, fear, or anger? The thoughts being generated from these emotions could be so numerous even to count. When people hear the diagnosis of having cancer, the fear they experience is overwhelming for many. Where are all of these emotions arising from? They didn't just suddenly jump inside of us the moment we found out about cancer. No, they were already there before, having been sown deeply into our consciousness in our past at some time. The health problem we have could be the necessary catalyst so as to clearly see these emotions. They are reflected in our awareness at the moment so that we can let them go. This isn't about blame, it's about taking responsibility for what's been sown. Whatever we experience emotionally in our perception of good or bad is God's way of inviting us further into our own redemptive story. If we are honest, unless life gives us more pressure, most of us avoid doing this internal work and growth. Stress is what forces us to grow. A health problem is a wonderful catalyst into the surrender of our emotions. Cancer could be the very best thing that ever happened to us. It is only the mind which labels things as good or bad. Cancer may stretch and grow us in ways that nothing else could. When you let go of the emotion or emotions sitting behind why you are asking the question, "Why me?" you will find that the question starts to disappear. Often, with the surrender of all of the many complex and deep-rooted emotions that arise in every moment of life when faced with a health problem like cancer, we give our physical bodies the best chance of healing. Sowing and reaping aren't about blame, guilt, or questioning why anything is happening to us. It simply is the truth of how the universe is wired. When we see the purpose behind why things are this way, we realize that it has always been God's creative way to help us to see reflections of our consciousness so that we can surrender into love and be free. Freedom in this sense is total and complete peace. Peace is what we were all made for because it is what we are we already are. Peace is waiting for all of us within and is accessible at all times because it is what you already are. We reap what we sow, and life is a constant reflection because God cares tremendously about us growing and being more like Him. What would happen if you were aware every second of your life of what you're feeling emotionally on the inside? What would happen if you constantly were letting go of and forgiving yourself for feeling negative emotions that don't support your life or growth? Will you commit to deeply reflecting on your past and present to make a very concerted effort to let go of your negative emotions? If you choose to journey down this road of self-discovery and letting go of the negative within you, your consciousness can change very quickly. And as a consequence, life, love, joy, and peace can be experienced more every day.